Okay, so welcome. Today I'm going to show you guys how to use ripple beads, and these are some examples of ripple beads. They're quite new, and they are kind of what they say they are. They're beads that have like little ripples in them, and I recently discovered them. I think they're really pretty, and there's a whole ton of different things you can do with them that's quite different to using just regular beads. But today I'm just going to show you some basics. So I'm going to show you how to make a bracelet like this one here. It's just using nylon wire, and I've just threaded it through, but they make kind of really nice bracelets because they give just a really cool little effect. Also how to make a little loop at the end. I've also had a little play with some earrings. I mean, they're really versatile, so there's so much you can do with these, but these are I've just popped some ripple beads sideways on some 0.8mm silver plated wire with some little pearl beads as well, and I just really like the little effect that I've been able to get from those. So without further ado, we'll get on to the tutorial. The first thing that I'm going to need is some nylon wire. So I've just got a reel here, and the one I'm using is 0.4mm thick. And I'm just going to take a generous amount. It's way too much for a bracelet, but it's always good to have more to work with than run out. So I've got a nice long piece here, and I'm going to select my beads. So for this bracelet I'm going to use some of these matte gold ripple beads, and then I'm going to combine it with these kind of minty green sparkly beads, and I've also got some little tiny gold almost crimp beads to use for the little ends that you can see on here. So to start with, I'm just going to thread on 2 of my green beads. We'll call them green. I'm not sure if they're green or blue, mint. We'll go with green. So I'm just going to start with 2 of those, and I'm just threading them onto my nylon wire. And then I'm going to put on my first ripple bead and just thread it on. And I'm going to stick towards one end of the wire, but I'm leaving a nice generous piece here too. So I'm kind of working from one side to the other. Then I'm going to thread on my little golden crimp bead. So you can see I've got all 4 in a row. Now at this point I'm going to thread my wire back, leaving out the golden crimp bead, and back through the ripple bead. So what I'm doing in effect is encasing that golden crimp bead in the wire itself, and I'm just going to pull that nice and tight so that I have kind of trapped it there. And then you can see I've got my gold bead, my ripple bead, and then my 2 green beads after that. So I'm going to leave that side as my end, my short end, and I'm going to carry on. So going to the other end now of the wire, I'm going to thread on my next ripple bead, and my gold crimp bead, and every time I thread on a gold crimp bead I'm just going to go back through the ripple bead that I put on before and pull my wire nice and tight. Lovely. Make sure there aren't any gaps. If there are any gaps, just adjust it until they close, because we want it to be a nice, tight, neat piece. Okay, so now you can see, hopefully, that I've got my ripple bead with my golden crimp bead, and then I've got my 2 green beads in the middle, and then the same on the other side. So basically that's the initial start to the bracelet, and then I'm just going to keep going in the same way. So next, again, we're working with the long end this time, taking 2 more green beads and popping those on. 1, Eidos. Not very good at other languages. And then my golden crimp bead, no, sorry, my golden ripple bead goes next, and followed by my golden crimp bead. Lovely. And then I'm just going to thread back through the ripple bead. And essentially this is the only technique we're really using to build up the bracelet. So once you've done a few, it does take a kind of funny shape, but once you kind of carry on with it, it evens itself out and becomes a nice kind of bracelet-y shape. So then again, 2 more of these beads, and I'm just going to carry on with 2 green beads, a ripple bead and a golden crimp bead, 2 green beads, a ripple bead and a golden crimp bead, all the way until I've made up enough to cover my wrist. I've now come pretty much to the end of my beading, so when I kind of try it on, it fits nicely, but I'm allowing a little bit of room for the clasp, but you want to make sure that it kind of goes all the way around your wrist without any holes. And then what I want to do is create a loop at one end, and I'm going to leave one of my ripple beads as the other end, so that you can see, like in this bracelet I made before, it creates this lovely little clasp where I've got a loop and my ripple bead, and that holds it in place. And I think that's a really nice touch of this bracelet. So to start with, I'm going to make my loop at this side. I'm going to use it on the side that I've got the most spare nylon wire, so I've got plenty. And you can see I finished with a ripple bead, so I'm going to do 2 more of my green beads, and then I'm going to put on a crimp. Now a crimp, you probably can't see, they're so tiny, but it's like a little tiny silver or gold tube, and I'm just threading it on, and they're used for fastening and attaching things in jewellery. So I've just threaded on a crimp, and then I'm going to carry on with my green beads, and you'll see why in a minute. But basically these beads that I'm threading on now are all part of the loop that I'm going to use as my fastening for my clasp. So I'll need quite a few of them, more than 2 this time. I'm not quite sure how many I'm going to need, but we'll see as we go along. And I haven't closed my crimp, I've literally just put it on. I will show you how to close it in a minute. So I'll start with 10 and see how that goes. So I'm just going to go around and make the loop as big as it would be if it was just coming up back round to the crimp. So this is just a test, and I'm going to thread through my gold bead. Well, that is pretty big actually, it's bigger than I thought, so I think I need a few less beads. We'll start with 9, and it's really important at this stage to get the loop size right, because you want it tight enough that it's going to go over your ripple bead, but not so loose that it easily will come off. So it can be a little bit fiddly, but we're just going to test. And depending on the side of your beads, obviously you'll need a different amount. I think 9 is probably still a little bit too much. I'm going to go with 8. That looks a bit small to me. Maybe 9 was the magic number. Yeah. Okay, great. So for this one, we're going to use 9. So after I pop my bead on, now I'm going to thread my nylon wire back through the crimp bead. And I'm just going to pull that nice and tight. And you can see I've got a nice loop at the end. And at this stage I'm just going to try again, just to double triple check it's going to go over and fit, and it does. Nice, lovely fit, perfect. Now I'm ready to close my crimp bead. So I'm just getting some chain nose pliers. There's all different ways you can close crimps, but this is the simplest way. Make sure everything's pulled nice and tight. Get my chain nose pliers, place them just over the crimp and simply squash down nice and firmly once or twice. And just double check that it's not going to move. Brilliant. And once you're happy, you can cut off the end of the nylon wire. I'm just using some flush cutters there. Fab, so that's one side done. Now I just need to end this side. And what I'm actually going to do for this side is undo the last ripple bead and take that off. Then after my two green beads, I'm going to place on a crimp like I did on the other side, followed by my ripple bead and my silver, oh, not silver, gold ball bead. Go back through the ripple bead to make a loop and go back through the crimp bead as well with my nylon wire and just pull that nice and tight. For pulling everything nice and tight, you can use a bead reamer if you have one. They're basically like long needles on a stick, and sometimes I use those. With this one you can kind of do it with your hands because the beads aren't too small, but certainly if you're using small beads and it gets very delicate, then bead reamer is excellent. Okay, great. So then to finish off this side, I just need to close that crimp, which I do in the same way, just getting my chain nose pliers, or sometimes they're called snipe nose pliers. Make sure everything's nice and tight and give it a squash or a squidge, technical terms, and cut the end off with my flush cutters. Lovely, and there we have our finished ripple bead bracelet, complete with loop clasp. That is super easy to make and looks really effective. As usual, I've listed all the tools and materials that I've used in the tutorial today on the links below. And all that's left to say is thank you very much for watching. Subscribe if you're interested in learning more about jewellery making. And I hope you have enjoyed learning about ripple beads. They're really easy to get hold of. You can get them from pretty much any bead shop, and they are a huge trend at the moment, so I would get out there and get exploring. They come in all different colours, not just the ones that I've used today, and as you can see you can make all different things out of them. So I hope you enjoy and happy jewellery making.